All right, welcome to another pre-Pro Bowl, pre-Super Bowl edition of Buc What You Heard. I've got some very special guests today, and I'm really honored to have them on the show. I'm going to start with Joe Riollano. He has a couple of podcasts. He's a Carolina Panther fan, and I'll get around to talking about my reasoning and the method to my madness. But Joe, great football mind, and if you get a chance, check out this show. We do a show with the NFC South, Southbound and Down, and you get the fan perspective from the Atlanta Falcons, the Carolina Panthers, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the New Orleans Saints. So, Joe, how you doing tonight? And tell everybody how they can get a hold of you.
I'm doing fantastic. It's just been a glorious Thursday, and I guess I can't be down about anything now. My team is in the Super Bowl. They have a good chance of winning. I think it's going to be a great game. And you can reach me on Twitter at Joe Riollano. We also, like you mentioned, we have the C3 podcast Tuesday nights at 10 o'clock. It is the premier Carolina Panthers podcast. It is for fans, by fans, so it's definitely something the average fan can just hop on and enjoy or listen to on iTunes, Stitcher, wherever they can get it. And as you mentioned, Gene is one of our key members on Southbound and Down. That is also done. It's a sister podcast for C3 Podcast, where we talk about all things NFC South. It is the premier NFC South podcast, and that show is a lot of fun. We have a good time on that show. And please check out our website. It is CarolinaCatChronicles.com, where we have all the latest breaking Panther news from the fan perspective. We've got we're starting to do our position by position draft breakdown, and we're getting into that sort of stuff already for those of you draft fanatics. And Gene, let me thank you for having me on. I'm very excited about this. Thank you.
Hey, all right. And next up, we have the Steph Curry of ESPN, Rick Brown. Rick Brown, tell everybody how they can get a hold of you. And hey, if you get a chance, check out some of his writing on ESPN. He's a great writer. I really appreciate him. I think that Tampa's fortunate to have somebody that writes for him who's very even keel, and he gives his perspective, and he's usually on point.
I mean, do I need to? I need to hire you as my agent. I mean, that was just too great. But what's happening, folks? Rick Brown. You can find me on Twitter, and please find me on Twitter at RickBrown91. RickBrown91. I will converse with you. I will go back and forth with you. Well, maybe not back and forth, but I do interact with whoever comes and hollers at me. So, and mostly I talk Bucs, but hey, I'm a free agent. On Twitter it says Free Agent Rick. So yeah, I do some correspondent work for ESPN.com. Also at todayspigskin.com under NFC South. So I do more than just the Buccaneer stuff. I do some Carolina Panthers stuff, Atlanta Falcons, New Orleans Saints. Also, pewtercannons.com. That's strictly Tampa Bay Bucs stuff. And finally, I have a couple of podcasts, ionsports.com, and also just started one, Mick and Rick, and that's part of Insights. That's INSIIGHTS. INS, two I's in the middle, GHTS.com, and that's where me and Coach Mickey Clayton, former basketball coach up in Tallahassee, we just sit down and just shoot it up. just shoot it up. He throws me some alley-oops sometimes. I can't jump like I used to. I throw it back to him. He steals gunning. It's all good. So you can find me there, guys.
All right. Well, this is a special show for me. Unfortunately, as we've been talking over the weeks, we've been kind of transitioning away from Lovie Smith, and we do have a new head coach. We did talk last week with the Atlanta Falcons person, Aaron Freeman, and we talked about the changes that have come with the Bucs and what can Bucs fans expect from Mike Smith and Dirk Cutter as they were former Atlanta Falcons coaches. So it was really interesting. It's been an interesting process for us and as Bucs fans, and they finally finalized all the coaching moves. So now we can kind of focus on free agency and getting some of our guys that we want to retain, getting them signed, and possibly bringing in free agents to fill holes that we currently have. And Rick, this question is more directed at you. I read an article today where they were talking about keeping Altron Werner, and they said that he may be ideal for Mike Smith's defense, whereas he kind of fell out of favor with Coach Smith last season. And what are your? Have you heard anything like that, or is that more part of the rumor mill, or is there any truth to that?
There are some interesting things that's been taking place. The new DB's coach that the Bucs hired, he was the DB coach in Tennessee when Alteron made the Pro Bowl. He was also the DB coach in Dallas when Mike Jenkins made the Pro Bowl. So what I'm thinking is that by hiring this guy, the Bucs are hoping to return these guys back to glory, so to speak. So I can see that being true. I mean, Werner, even when they benched him, he found a way to get back on the field as a nickelback. I mean, he's never going to be that ball hawk where he gets you, 9, 10 interceptions a year. But he's always going to be consistent. He's a consistent tackler. He's hardly ever out of place. Yeah, he gets beat. He got beat on some slants and all, but what Buccaneer defender didn't this year, including Sterling Moore, who everyone thinks was your number one cornerback.
Yeah.
Another story. I'm not a coach. I just criticize the coach.
Yeah.
So
tape don't lie, though.
Tape don't lie. But what about teaching your defense to be? These guys were talented when you first got them. You cannot tell me that a Jonathan Banks has gone from being your best corner to can't even get on the field.
Yeah.
Something. There's some kind of disconnect there.
Yes,
you cannot
absolutely.
tell me that Alteron Werner, who was a Pro Bowler before he came to Tampa Bay, it wasn't 5-10 years ago. It was a year before he came to Tampa Bay. He can't get on the field except for a nickel? No. It's some kind of disconnect there. So the staff is hoping, and I want to see these guys under a new defensive scheme and see how they do.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I thought there was a lot of talent that was wasted on the bench. I personally, and this is no knock on the coaching or anything, this is just what I saw. I didn't like the rotation. You have to have consistency. Guys have to get reps, and in order to get comfortable in any defense. And you didn't see that. You saw if a guy made a mistake, he's out, another guy is in. You can only do that so much before you either shake a guy's confidence or you've run through everybody. So I didn't understand it. Who am I to question it? That's just how they were doing it. But hopefully, with Mike Smith's pedigree the way in his resume, I'm hoping that there will be improvements. So that was the big thing that I saw. Time will tell if it's going to work or not. But I'm really hoping that that along with the penalties, and I've made this argument for the past couple of years about the penalties, and Joe can attest to this. There were penalties, and I don't know how you fix it. I don't know if you put that on the coach or the players, because the players have to go out and play. And I saw so many penalties, and I've seen this. I would go all the way back to 2012, where the penalties were serious, and it's just consistently been there. And hopefully, with this coach and his the way he handles penalties, keeping penalties at a minimum, I'm hoping that reflects onto the team and they can, make that work. Because there were so many games they could have won had they not had drive-killing penalties, penalties that extended drives for the opposing offense that, they should have got them off the field.
Yeah,
So,
and indeed, you're right. I totally agree with you in there. It will be interesting to see. And you see, the thing is, though, the coaches can preach it all the time, but in the end, it does allow the players. But if the players aren't doing what they're supposed to do, then as a coach, you have the right to snatch them up out of there. So
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And
I
I want to
think that.
welcome. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Joe. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I think that falls also partially on the team veterans, the leaders of the team. You're on the field with the guys. You make a mistake like jumping off sides or a false start, something like that. You gotta go over there, talk them up, saying, "Okay, baby, you got one. Don't let it happen again." You know what I'm saying? You can't just put it all on the coaches and then expect the players to respond right away. I think you gotta have your veterans come over and talk to them, kind of pump them up, and if they do it again, then you start getting on them.
Yeah.
And
the one thing that I will say, and you've heard me talk about him week in and week out, is Jameis Winston. I've seen more and more Jameis Winston showing that leadership ability, whether it's a defensive player or an offensive player, talking them up, saying, "Hey, you can't do this, and you have to get around this." And I think that having him in place is going to be big for both sides of the ball. Quan Alexander, a guy that was sorely missed the last 4 games of the season, I think he's going to play a big part in this defense as well because of what he brought, that excitement, that fire that he brought to the defense. And everybody, I do want to bring in Peter Blake,
Spider,
what's up, man? How you
host
doing?
of the Sports Web. And Spider, go ahead and tell everybody how they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, you can contact me on Twitter at pblake1003, or of course, listen to the Sports Web on Saturday afternoons from 4 to 5 on WTAN 1340 AM. Bring your passion, bring your excitement. Just don't bring any nonsense.
All right. And Joe, I kind of wanted to get your perspective as an NFC South rival and having to face the Buccaneers twice a year. Over the past couple of years, how would you compare it to the season that they had this last season? Do you see them going in a different direction? Do you see them going in the right direction, or what are your thoughts?
I think so. I think that they've got the beginning of a very good foundation there. I think Winston was a man for the team. I think that was the best pick they could have made. I think him coming in and playing the way he did, he was so much of a better quarterback at the end of the year than he was when he first started. You could see the progress. You could really tell that he's putting in the effort. He's putting in the time. He's doing the things that he has to do to become a professional at his craft. And that's what you want to see out of a young quarterback, and that should inspire the other young guys who are coming in, to put forth that effort as well. You've got the makings of a solid offensive line. You still need a few pieces. Defense, there's some things to address there, but you have a few pieces in place. I think Werner being reunited with his defensive back coach is a good thing because I can speak to it personally. Michael Oher, who everybody had given up on, was reunited with his offensive line coach from the time he was in Baltimore when they won the Super Bowl and he was playing at a high level. And he's totally changed. Our offensive line, our left side has been such a much better group of blockers because of Oher than they were the last 2 years or last year and a half. So I think that's a good thing. So you got some things going. You brought in a really brilliant defensive mind, and I think the Bucs are headed in the right direction. Now you need a combination of a few good picks, a few more good picks, and something that I think Gettleman, I don't know if it's just unique to him, but Dave Gettleman is able to get these free agents, these guys that nobody wants anymore, bring them in for a year or two, and really harness their abilities. You know, he gets them that they fit perfectly within the defensive scheme we're using. And it has led to those players going on to other teams, which is unfortunate, but they have done so well in Carolina that teams have wanted them to come and play there. So that's really key. You know, we've got a good mix of draft picks and incredibly useful free agents. Like Coleman, he came in on a 2-year deal, and he's made a huge impact on that defense. 7 interceptions in the regular season, I think 8 now. No, 9 now, I think, including the postseason.
Yeah.
So,
and what's really great about that, I think that Carolina does have the blueprint that a lot of NFL teams should really look at in practicing patience. And if you get the right GM with the right coach, and you have to have a franchise quarterback, it's going to make all the difference in the world.
I agree. I think that quarterback is probably the hardest position to get, but I think you have it in Jameis Winston.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And that's just part of the building blocks. Pete, what were you going to say?
No, I think that you hit on a great point here. As a Buccaneer fan right now, the exciting thing about this team is the fact that you have a franchise quarterback in place, and you're going to have possibly $50 million under the salary cap. And
Ooh.
now you have, maybe more, maybe $70 million. Depends on what you do with Vincent Jackson. Depends on what you do with Werner. It doesn't seem like Werner's going to go anywhere now. But this is an attractive position, and you talk about free agents. Jameis Winston is going to help that recruiting process out, because you look around the league and they see this young kid come in and basically take this team and make it his, and they want to be a part of something like this. So overall, I think right now the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are in a great position because of the money they have under the cap and the fact that they have one of the most important positions in the NFL, and that's at franchise quarterback with Jameis Winston. But you look at the Carolina Panthers, you talk about Coleman. How about Ted Ginn? I mean, 10 touchdowns by Ted Ginn this year. This guy's been inconsistent, but Cam Newton has made him into a superstar. I mean, you would think losing Calvin Benjamin the first of the year that would hurt that team, and yet we're talking about this team in the Super Bowl. Now, getting back to the Buccaneers, the first guy they should call should be Mario Williams, beyond a shadow of a doubt. 31 years old, a defensive end from the Buffalo Bills. He does not fit into that Rex Ryan defense. He will automatically upgrade your pass rush. I don't care if he's 31 years old. Get him in that building. Get him on that jet, and don't let him leave the building until you got a deal for him. Do not collect $200. Do not pass go. Get that guy signed, because he automatically upgrades that defensive line, and they need that. Gerald McCoy needs help. Jacques Smith, he's a nice player, but he's a rotational player. William Golston, he could be a potential starting defensive end in this league, but he hasn't shown that unique ability to get after the quarterback. You look at the Denver Broncos, you look at the Carolina Panthers, 2 top defenses in the NFL. They're in the Super Bowl. Make no mistake about it, the Buccaneers need to build that defense, and it starts with Mario Williams.
I think you're right.
What are your thoughts? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say you couldn't get a better person to start to assemble that defense the way you want it than Mario Williams. I really believe that.
Yeah.
Rick, your thoughts?
I know what you're saying, Spider. I do. But my thing is, if you bring in a veteran like a Mario Williams, will he come in and automatically try to be the savior? Will he try to be, if this was a Jared Allen, maybe I can understand that. I mean, but what has Mario actually done to come in and be that guy? Now, don't get me wrong. I totally agree with you that when he comes in, if he came in, he would automatically upgrade that defensive line.
Right.
Totally. They have one rush in and I think I'm a little higher on Jaquise than you are, but but other than him, I mean, you've seen flashes from a Howard Jones, but he's had 5 games or whatever in his career. And I'm trying to think of anybody else. George Johnson, he's a rotational player.
Yeah.
He's a rotational player. And you're right. With Golston, he's a 2-down guy. He's a first and second down guy. He's not a pass rusher.
Let me ask this. Because we've all seen the Buccaneers this season. Was play calling possibly part of the problem with the defense? I saw a lot of plays where Lavonte David was faking a blitz and he was caught in the middle, and I don't think they used him to the best of his ability. And, once again, I'm not being critical of anybody. I'm just saying, watching the film over again, I saw a lot of plays that I was scratching my head about. When you're playing so far off and a quarterback is shredding you with short passes and you don't adjust that, you don't make any adjustments. In the second half, you're playing the same scheme and you're not making any adjustments. I'm just wondering, could play calling have potentially affected the defense as well?
Definitely. It could definitely be a possibility because you look at the secondary overall, they look like they were lost in some places. You look at the safety play, they look like they were lost. I don't think they necessarily had the talent, but again, I always go back to this factor. Whose fault was that? Who had the final say on the 53? That was Lovie Smith. He went out there, Michael Johnson. It was a complete disaster. So I know what you're saying, Rick, about I don't think Mario Williams has to really come in here and be the savior. What I think he has to do is he has to just rush the passer, help Gerald McCoy out because McCoy is the face of this defense besides Lavonte David and Quan Alexander, and just get some energy with this defensive line. And look, the great opportunity here with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and not to take anything away from Joe Cullen, but you have John Hayes, you just got from the Cincinnati Bengals, who could be one of the top defensive line coaches in the NFL. You have an opportunity here for this coach to push these players to limits that we've never seen before. So take advantage of it. And when you have all that money, go out there and get a guy that can rush the passer. Because, look, I'm not sure if you're going to find a guy in the draft. They talk about DeForest Buckner. Is he athletic enough? Does he have the speed? You're probably not going to get Joey Bosa unless you try to trade up. It's always a unique possibility because you have John Robinson, who worked with the Bucs, who's now the general manager of the Tennessee Titans. But I'm not sure if you're going to find that edge rusher in the draft. So why not get something that you know about? What do we know about Mario Williams? When he's in the right defense, he can get after that quarterback, and that's
I can see that.
I'm going to say, just as a side note, I heard earlier today that the Dolphins might not be opposed to getting rid of Sue because of the size of the hit that they're going to take in salary cap this year for him. I'm just throwing that out there.
No, I mean, I think they're going to definitely restructure his deal, possibly. Olivier Vernon could also be a free agent, but I'm looking at the free agent class right now. I see Mario Williams as, heads and tails, probably the best pass rusher out there. But again, it's going to be money, and it's going to be the fact, does he want to come down there? Can you convince him? You should be able to convince him. And I think the Buccaneers, again, are in great position right now. I think this team was a lot better than a 6-win team, and I think that's ultimately why Lovie Smith lost his job. I'm sorry. 5 Pro Bowlers?
Wait, stop. Don't you dare say nothing about Pro Bowlers. Come on now. Come on, stop that. Don't go there. But better than at the beginning of the year, looking at that roster, looking at that schedule, you telling me they were better than 6 wins?
Absolutely. I thought they could be a 10-win team. I thought they could be a 10-win team because of Jameis Winston. I thought, with the second year with Lovie Smith, all the excuses we heard last year was how Lovie Smith was going to call his own plays and the talent was going to be more acclimated to this defensive system. Look, if this defense, guys, is just average, most likely they win 10 games, but because their defense, they blew a 24-point lead to your team, Rick Brown. Polk County, stand up. They lost to the Washington Redskins and blew a 24-point lead. If you're a defensive-minded coach, you've got to shut that down. You lose to the Houston Texans, not only because of drop passes, but because of your defense. The Giants game.
Special teams. And the
Yeah, I
special
mean,
teams.
you play against the Chicago Bears. You have the Chicago Bears and the New Orleans Saints, and I get it. You lost Quan Alexander, a rookie who's your defensive leader. That's a problem. Everybody's got to step up. That defense didn't step up. There was definitely more than 6 wins with this team last year. Definitely.
Yeah, but they won games that they shouldn't have. That Dallas game, they should have won that game.
I agree.
They probably should have lost to Atlanta. Games that I know what you're saying, but I think the games that you say they should have lost, I think it balances out in some cases. So I just honestly, when the Bucs started this season, I said 6 wins. I said 6, and I said, and they need to get a couple early to get 6. I just didn't think, because you had the rookie quarterback.
Sure.
Yes,
Right.
I knew.
And he was going to make, you know, there were going to be growing pains. You
Yes.
knew there were going to be things that were going to happen that, you know, just part of becoming an NFL quarterback.
First pass of his career.
Yeah,
Growing pains. Growing pains.
Did we forget that already? I mean, Twitter blew up. I mean, they thought Jameis Winston was a bust. It was completely ridiculous. And you look at that game, guys, just that Titans game, and the difference between the Titans game and the Carolina Panther game, it was kind of the same, wasn't it? So I think, you know what? I agree with the move. I like Lovie Smith. But I think Lovie Smith is a defensive coordinator, and I think he had too much power with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I think that basically sank his ship. And in saying that, I think next year it's going to be all on Jason Light, and Jason Light's going to have to perform. And who knows, Dirk Cutter's going to have to perform. But I think the talent is here. You just got to know how to use the talent. You can't convince me, guys, that you couldn't use Darrelle Revis. And you look at that Darrelle Revis trade, what did they get for it? Michael Johnson, nothing. Evan Smith, decent. Anthony Collins, nothing. Werner, nothing. And you traded one of the best cornerbacks because what? He made $16 million and you couldn't fit him in your system? Why? How is that possible?
I can't argue with that.
I can't argue with that. I can't argue with that either. That's makes perfect sense.
That's just over management.
Deshaun Golston, I mean, look at what they've done around the league ever since they left the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What have they done? They've been pretty good players. I mean, it's not about, you know, trying to get your defensive system and get guys to fit your system. It's about trying to make those players fit your system. Try to make them see what their strengths and their weaknesses is. And instead, it's all about, well, this guy doesn't fit in the Lovie Smith. You know, a story that I read, Joe Bucksman does a great job with Bucs coverage. They had Greg Gabriel, who used to work with Lovie Smith, and they had an unbelievable statistic. He drafted 8 safeties, 8, with the Chicago Bears because he could never find a safety that would fit his system. That tells you all you need to know. And look, you've got to make adjustments. I think Mike Smith said it perfectly at his press conference. We've got to change up our looks. We can't just strictly be a base 4-3. We got to be 3-4. We got to change up these looks, and then we can do that. I think our defense can be successful. So go back to the previous point. Do I think it was play calling? Absolutely, yes, it was play calling.
I have no problem with
the
that.
whole system.
You know, Joe and Spider, I have no problems with the blame being on Lovie Smith. I have no problems, especially defensively. Some of the things it was mentioned that the Quan Alexander, Levante David and Quan faking blitzing and then trying to jump back, all that gaming stuff, all that, whatever. One thing I do want to set the record straight. And I know you guys do watch film, so I'm not talking to you directly, but what Spider is saying, they played cover 2 the entire game. He's not saying that. He is not saying that, so don't think that.
No.
They hardly ever played cover 2, to be perfectly honest. And when they played cover 2,
wasn't it?
yes, single high safety. And when they played cover 2, they didn't know how to play it.
No.
But that's another story.
Especially in slant pass, right, Rick? Especially against your Redskins. Jordan Reed is still scoring touchdowns on you.
Yeah, that game, even though that game made the playoffs, I think that was the game that helped us make the
I've still got
playoffs.
an ulcer from that Washington game. Oh my God,
I can laugh about it now.
I was physically sick, man, after that game. I wanted to go curl up. I wanted to go curl up in my bed and cry after that game because it was just that bad.
That team made Kirk Cousins look like a freaking. He made him look like a
Pro Bowler.
You liked that. You liked that.
I liked it that game. I liked it most of the season.
You did like it.
But I'm not a Kirk Cousins fan. Not at all. But no. There are some things though that Lovey did. I mean, totally just defensively. You have to scratch your head and like what?
What?
Yeah.
What?
Tim Jennings.
What?
Mike Jenkins.
Yeah, what a bust.
Tim Jennings. He
Saints
got
game.
hyped with him Saints game because he was able to cover Cooks.
Brandon Cooks, shut him down.
And that's why he loved him. I can understand when you see your old players and you think they can still do it, and they should know the system. I understand that.
Yeah.
But one thing about, and I'll let Lovey go since the Bucs have already let him go. As much as Lovey is criticized with the final 53, for 2 years he had an offensive-minded draft. For 2 years, and we all noticed that one defensive player drafted.
Yep.
And he became the starter.
Yeah.
This year, this is why I wanted another year, because they would have gone defense this year. Then let's see what we have.
Yeah.
That was my only, not my only,
I think the biggest frustration I had was Lovey being part of the personnel decision making. That should have all been left to the general manager. I've only seen a few coaches that are good at it, and even less that are successful at it. And he just he should have been focused on that defense, and that should have been, because that's where his mind is. That should have been where his focus was, not on players. You leave that to the general manager to get players to fit your scheme, and that's why you don't have a lot of coaches that are general managers. You look at Chip Kelly. The chip ship sank the minute he became a personnel coach. You just cannot do it. It just doesn't work. And like I said, I've only known of a few coaches who were decent at it.
Guys, I think this also goes on top of ownership. From the get-go, hiring Lovie Smith before you hire a general manager. I don't understand that line of thinking.
That's crazy.
Me, you've got to hire a general manager, and look, to be fair to Lovie Smith decided on Jameis Winston. He made that decision. He brought in Dirk Cutter. That was a great decision. He hired Jason Light. That was a great decision. I mean, he had some personnel moves. He had Mike Evans. We'll see, but it looks like Mike Evans is going to be a receiver that's going to be feared in the NFL for years to come. He made some good decisions, but overall, the guy was hired to remake this defense, and you expected it as a Bucs fan. You expected this team to at least be an average defense, and they weren't even that. So to me, at the end of the day, it was not only the personnel stuff, it was the fact that the defense really didn't get better. They actually got worse, and on top of it, the mind-numbing thing about watching the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this year, guys, and you have to agree with me, was the penalty situation completely out of control. And, I don't know if it would have improved if you give him another year.
Yeah.
Gene harped on that all year long. That was Gene's problem all year long. He couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Even going back to last season, that was a big thing for me. I just couldn't figure out why they could never figure it out. and it would seem like they would get a drive, and you get a 25-yard pass, and next thing you know, you're looking over your shoulder, and there's a flag on the ground. So you're taking it all the way back plus 10. So that's just. But it's been that way for a long time, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have always been on the top half of the NFL in penalties. So it's always been somewhat of an issue. So with that being said, and I like your idea about Mario Williams. Are there any other free agents that you guys can think of that would be able to come into Tampa and fill a hole or fill a need? I've been looking. I like Alshon Jeffries. Maybe I'm crazy, but I would love to see Alshon Jeffries come here. I know that he's injury prone a lot, but I think that he would fit in here.
Well,
So,
go ahead.
as a 1 or 2?
As a 2, no, not as a 1, not as a 1.
So are you getting rid of Vince?
I don't know where I think you need somebody to stretch the field. I'm watching Mike Evans, and he's still working on his route running. I was looking at his hands. We don't know if his head's in the game. I think it would be nice to, I don't know, maybe I'm just throwing that out there.
Spider, you go.
No, I mean you go. I'm with me on this. I say this: you got to keep Vincent Jackson because he's an integral part, but you got to figure out if he's healthy. Okay, now you have Louis Murphy, who's a slot guy, so you don't know if he's healthy because he's also coming off an ACL. So to answer your question, I keep Vincent Jackson at a reduced salary because he means so much to this offense. You have Mike Evans, and then you go to Cleveland and you get Travis Benjamin to fit in your slot because that guy can basically blow the top off of a defense, or maybe a Rashard Matthews from the Miami Dolphins. Another guy that I would still, and I hate to say this to you, Mr. Carolina Panther fan, I would make a hard charge for Mr. Josh Norman. Hey, look, if you can't beat him, join him.
I think he's going to get the tag. I think we're going to tag him this year.
You think?
Yeah, I think that's what we're going to end up doing because we were really trying at the beginning of the season and the offseason to work something out with him, and he was betting on himself and figuring he could get more money, which I think he can.
Yeah.
But I think we'll end up putting the tag on him just to try to have the extra year to come to some sort of an agreement. He's going to be 30 in a couple of years. It's not like he's a young guy. So I think we're going to tag him.
What is the salary cap looking like for Carolina?
I want to say it's around 18 to 20 something million. I can't tell you honestly. It's the best it's been in like 4 years ago.
Or longer.
And I think we are going to end up signing short, but I think we're going to cap Norman.
To me, it's an idea. You got to throw it out there. If he doesn't get, Alshon Jeffrey, the problem for me, he could be a number 1, number 2 wide receiver, but you just don't know because he missed so many games last year with some injuries, with some lingering injuries, especially some hamstrings. So you kind of got that with Mike Evans. Mike Evans had a hamstring injury. He's had some leg injuries. So I don't know. And I think ultimately, Gene, the Bears will probably tag him because he is probably their number 1 wide receiver. Another player that I'm looking at, I don't know if you agree with this, Rick Brown, you're a smart guy. Eric Weddle from the San Diego Chargers, he said that he doesn't want to play. Instant upgrade on your secondary. I like that.
I do like that. I do. I mean, he's not only heady, but the dude can hit. He makes plays. And that's something that the secondary hasn't done. I really expected that Bradley McDougald to be like him. I really thought he was not only a hard hitter, but he was a playmaker back then. He showed me a little bit early on, and not last year, but late last year. I mean, not this past season, but late last year.
Yeah, like the last 2 or 3 games.
Right. Yeah. He was flying. He was everywhere. Sort of like what Keith Tandy did this year. The last couple of games, just everywhere, flying everywhere. That's what. So yeah, he would be instant upgrade.
Yeah.
I mean, and I still believe in Bradley McDougall. And the way Tandy played, I think he has a
Now,
spot on the team
let me ask
somewhere.
this. I mean, once again, I go back to play calling. Is it possible that these guys are worried about making mistakes and getting benched? Could
Oh, yeah.
that factor into this? Because it seems like when a player made a mistake, you didn't see him and he got the hook and you didn't see him no more until somebody else made a mistake and then he was somehow rotated back in. But I just felt like those players were playing not to make mistakes a lot.
Yeah.
And that kind of bothers me. They weren't playing as aggressive. I would say the one game that they were aggressive is the Philadelphia Eagles game. They were pretty aggressive in that game, and that's because they had built up that lead and they were able to pin their ears back and just do what they needed to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and I again, you don't know the system that Mike Smith is going to run. He may like some of these players, and that's what's so important in this offseason, not only to try to spend money, but spend money wisely and evaluate the talent that you have. Because I always go back to this point, Raheem Morris gets hired, and a lot of people are saying, Mike Clayton's done, and then Mike Clayton gets a contract extension because they've evaluated him as being great. Now, he didn't turn out great, but you don't know what this administration has in store. They may feel like Werner is a corner because he fits better in this system. They may like a player like McDougall or Chris Conti. They may like those players. You don't know. But what I'm saying is, if you want to get upgrades and you have the money to do it, spend wisely, but go out there and get players that on film they're going to fit your system and that you're going to get your bang for your buck. Don't go after Michael Johnson and don't go after Anthony Collins and guys that are unknown. Go after players that are worth going after. And it's simplistic.
Yeah, absolutely. And Joe, would you agree that that's based on where your team is now and where they were with the 2-win season? Is that how Carolina kind of built their team up?
Yeah, that is sort of the way they did it. They had 2 wins. They went to the draft and they got their guy and brought in some free agents. Some of the free agents came back, some of them left, some of them we didn't want back. Mm-hmm. And then the next year we had a really good draft again. And again, we brought in some key free agents. Now, not all the free agents work out, of course, but if you bring in 5 or 6 and 3 or 4 work out, and 1 or 2 excel, then you've done a good job. I think the biggest thing with our good fortune regarding free agents is Dave Gettleman was a scout for a very long time with the Giants, so he became a really good evaluator of talent and able to see how a certain player and his abilities will work with a particular style of defense. Mm-hmm. And so that's where I think this success he's had with finding these diamonds in the rough or these cast-offs from other teams, that's where I really think the ability to determine what we need in our defense and or offense and what will help. Ted Ginn, they knew they wanted. As soon as he was cut or released by the Cardinals, they knew he was the first guy they were going to go after because he had a really good year the year he was here. Then he left for free agency because of money. Mm-hmm. And he got cut because he was only a punt returner with the Cardinals. They didn't use him as a receiver. And now he comes to Carolina and has a career season, 750 yards, 10 touchdowns. And just think, if he would have had half of the catches he would have dropped, how good his numbers would have been.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It really is. Yeah. But I look at the Carolina Panthers, and you look at how they built that team. And not only they drafted Cam Newton and the evolution of Cam Newton because he became a pocket passer, very, very important. But you look at the defensive side of the ball. You get Luke Kuechly. You had Thomas Davis already. You look at the defensive line. They had Johnson. They drafted Star Latui. They had K'Wan Short. I mean, they built that defense up. Your secondary, they get guys like Peanut Tillman, Cortland Finnegan. They get him off the street. They're productive. They buy in. Ron Rivera has that team buying in. But the most important factor of the Carolina Panthers, and I'm not going to deny, do I like everything that Cam Newton does? Not necessarily, but the guy balled out this year. 45 touchdowns total. He is the MVP of the league, and the reason is the evolution of him becoming a pocket-passing quarterback. And give credit to where credit is due, guys. Mike Shula is a hell of an offensive coordinator because he finally got Cam Newton to be so productive in this offense. This guy should be getting a contract extension. Again, though, the main point is Cam Newton coming of age right before our eyes.
And I think
not this type of quarterback.
The biggest key with Cam Newton was the fact that Benjamin went down. Because that was Cam's go-to guy. In a pin, you know, you just throw it high in his direction, and 9 times out of 10 he was going to come down with it. But by losing him, that forced Cam to go through his progressions, to find the right guy, to be patient in the pocket, to really, really sit down and you know, look over film. When you're in that pocket, you can't just chuck the ball wherever you want. You have to make a good throw. So in a sense, the fact that Benjamin went out was the best thing that could have happened to Cam because it made him become that pocket passer. It forced him to learn how to sit in that pocket and read a defense and know where to go with the ball.
And look, that's always the biggest thing with the quarterback getting drafted out of college, coming out of that spread system. You know, the mobile quarterbacks are usually a 1-read or 2-read, mostly a 1-read quarterback. So when you get in the NFL, you definitely have to go through those progressions. And you look at quarterbacks around the league like a Colin Kaepernick, like a RG3. Sorry, Rick, I know. You know, first year he was good. After he got injured and he couldn't depend on his athleticism anymore. Then you see what kind of quarterback he is. So, you know, don't misunderstand this. Cam Newton is definitely doing some things that other quarterbacks haven't been able to do, especially Colin Kaepernick. So going through your progressions, especially in NFL, when other defenses, unlike the Bucs, are changing up their looks, it's so important, and that's why the Carolina Panthers are in the Super Bowl.
Not only that, that's not the only reason why they're in the Super Bowl.
Well, that's a big reason.
No. Another reason is, remember, 3 years ago, they were talking about getting rid of Rivera.
I know.
Am I wrong?
No, you're right. You're right.
So
he was on a hot seat.
They were patient with their head coach. And I give Jerry Richardson, who I did not like 5 years ago, but I give him all the credit in the world to forget about the naysayers out there, the Twitter mafia, and the rest of the loud mouths. He had a plan. He believed in Rivera, and look where they are now. I mean,
Joe and Peter, who was saying this last season? Who was saying what he just said? Who was saying that last season?
You were, but you were also saying that Mike Glennon should be a starting quarterback in the NFL. So don't
Well, that was way back when. That was way back in. My argument was give him a chance. That was my only argument. Give him a chance.
I made
Mike Glennon.
The same argument when you put him up against what's his name, the journeyman backup quarterback.
Josh McCown.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you had a guy that had a chance to start up against McCown. What a circus that was.
Terrible. And that was another mistake I thought Lovie Smith made. Not hiring at least an offensive coordinator or maybe an offensive consultant. And Rick, you're privy to this information. The reason why Lovie Smith lost his job this year supposedly is because he went to the Glazers and he asked for a defensive consultant. I say, why did you do that the year before? Offensive.
On the offensive side, yeah.
No. But if you do that, then you don't get number 3.
That's true.
You think?
That's true. Yeah. That's true. That's true. No, it's definitely.
I mean, really. Think about it.
They tanked that game against New Orleans. I don't care what anybody says. They tanked that game versus the Saints. And thank God they did because they were up 20-7. And I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? You
They
need
were
to lose
evaluating
this
talent
game.
in the second half.
You
No.
better lose this
Yeah.
game.
I'm sure they were.
They were evaluating talent in the second half of the game. That's what it was.
You're starting to sound like Sean the sports con over there.
So Joe, how does it feel as a fan? You know, you've been watching this team through the ups and downs, and to finally get to the Super Bowl. I know this is the second time for you guys, but
Yeah.
how does this one feel compared to having a Jake Delhomme as your starting quarterback? And how do you guys feel? How's the team? How is the fan base feeling right now?
There's lots of excitement. I mean, there's a real buzz going around the city of Charlotte, not just because the Hornets are back, but there really is we feel united. You know what I mean? We feel like this is a team of destiny, a team of fate. So I think and we're in a good place, and we feel like the team is ready. You know, they've been through the wars, they fought some hard games, they've had some games that they've let get away from them and almost lose, but they are motivated. They're motivated. They want this win. They want this win for all the effort that they've put in, the focus, the concentration, all the Mondays that they didn't take off, because they had the option to take Mondays off, but people would show up Monday and start preparing for the week ahead. You know, this is something they've been putting their heart and soul into, and I can't wait.
Yeah. And as a Bucs fan, I remember when Tampa beat Philadelphia in the NFC Championship, and just that excitement, knowing that your team is getting ready to go play for it all. There's nothing like it. So you know, you got to enjoy every minute of it that you can.
I agree.
And you know, wear your shirt proudly, and you know, just
That's right, baby.
And when they win, run down the street halfway naked, because that's what I did when the Bucs beat the Philadelphia Eagles. Because as a Bucs fan, we could never beat the Philadelphia Eagles, but we knew as Bucs fans, once we won that Philadelphia Eagle game, that it was a wrap, that we had the right coach, we had the right parts, we had the right defense, it was the right time. I'm hoping the Carolina Panthers win that game for your sake. You know, I think it's going to be a great game between two talented defenses. But you know what? It's been 13 years, guys, to the day. It seems like it's been 113 years for Bucs fans because of all the coaching changes and all the turmoil with your boy Greg Schiano, Gene, and the MRSA.
And your boy Mark Dominic.
Yeah, but that's your boy. That's not my boy. That's your boy. He still drafted defensive ends and defensive players to help this defensive line, and they're still bust.
Yeah.
And look at Rick shake his head. He knows what I'm talking about. He knows
Rick, I would like to get a comment on that. Rick, go ahead.
Yo no speaking English. Yo habla español. Yo habla español, señor. Señor Mark.
I know Rick because I remember Rick from the 10-10 days. We used to do a show called The Sports Mob. He used to come on, and we used to talk about this, and we would look at each other and be like, come on, is this Bucs team going to be good? And we look at each other at the end of the night and say, no. It was going to be rough. It was rough.
So I want to get everybody's picks. Joe, I know who you're picking to win the Super Bowl between Carolina Panthers and the Denver Broncos. And can you give us a score?
This is the first time I'm doing this. We were going to do it on our podcast on Tuesday, but you know I decided, hey,
buddy.
we got
Put
a
him on the
week.
spot.
We got another week, so we're going to do it next week. But I do feel Carolina's going to win. I think defensively these teams are pretty equal. You know, we play different styles of defense as far as formations go, but I think it's all about the pass rush, getting to the quarterback with a solid secondary. I think on offense is where you see a little bit of a advantage for the Panthers, just because they have been able to run the ball so effectively against whoever they've played. And when you're able to run the ball, you're able to take time off the clock, you control the clock, you keep the other team's quarterback and offense on the sideline. They can't put up points from there. So I think Carolina wins. I think it's going to be a relatively high scoring. I say high scoring. I'm talking like Carolina 31, Denver 17, something like that.
Yeah, that's extremely possible. I've been watching Peyton Manning, and to me, he's lost velocity. He's lost the zip that he has on a ball. He can still place it in some places, but he just doesn't look like the same Peyton Manning that we've seen over the years. He looks more like a game manager with all the interceptions that he's thrown. I think he's a lot more careful of where he's putting the ball, and it's just in years past you saw Peyton Manning in the fourth quarter, and you're like, oh man, this game could go either way if Peyton Manning's got the ball in the fourth quarter, but you just don't really feel like that anymore, and especially from what I saw, in the playoffs and in the regular season, I just don't see that. So I could see where your score could possibly be an actual score. Peter.
Yeah, I look at this matchup. I think the Carolina Panthers are one of the hottest teams in the NFL right now. They have clearly the best player in the league, but I look at this Denver Bronco defense and what they did to the New England Patriots, and I'm not sure the Carolina Panthers have faced a pass rush like the Broncos have with a Von Miller and with a DeMarcus Ware. The key matchup to look at is Michael Orr versus Von Miller. They're going to go one-on-one, and if you don't go one-on-one and you try to go max protect, then you leave DeMarcus Ware out there. I almost think this is like an old-school Bronco team. Like Peyton Manning has finally bought into running the ball and playing defense. And for that matter, I think it's win one for Peyton. I like the Denver Broncos 23-17 over the Carolina Panthers. I think Peyton Manning goes off into the sunset. And I think John Elway and Gary Kubiak, they have built this team specifically for Peyton Manning. And you're right, he is a game manager, but you know what? He hasn't had a turnover in a long time. I like the Broncos in this matchup.
Rick Brown.
I do think the defenses will determine the outcome of this game. I, along with Spider, think that the Denver Broncos defense, no matter what the stats are saying, as one of the best defenses in the league, if not the best.
Yeah.
Not only with their pass rushing, but also with those corners. I mean, Aqib Talib, who we all know well, is having a heck of a season, and the kid on the other side of him is no slouch either. But at the same time, Cam Newton has proved me wrong this year, because once Kelvin Benjamin went down, I said they were through. And even though, and last week I said that in order for them to beat the Cardinals, they would have to run the ball. And Cam threw for over 300 yards. I'm going to say the Carolina Panthers will win this one and send Peyton off to the sunset, but he won't be happy. Carolina Panthers 23, Peyton Manning and the Broncos 20.
Wow, close one. For me, and I kind of touched on this a little bit, Peyton Manning is not the Peyton Manning that we're used to. And that, to me, was a deciding factor where I came up with Carolina coming up big in the Super Bowl. What can I say about Cam Newton? He's played head and shoulders above anything that I've ever seen from him. He has finally taken his game to that next level. He seems unflappable at times, where there were times where I remember Cam Newton on the bench pouting, and you see this guy hyping his team up, getting his team, even out there talking to the defense. This guy, he wants this, and you could see it in the way they play and the way they take care of business. They totally dismantled that Cardinals team, and that was a team that should have given them the most competition. So I mean, I'm not taking anything away from Denver. I just don't think that they're playing on the same level as the Carolina Panthers collectively. And I think that's going to be the deciding factor. Yeah, I understand about the defense, and I agree with you about Aqib Talib. But as a whole team, I just see this Carolina Panthers team with more confidence, and they have that swagger that will get you that win. So for me, I'm looking at 28-14 Carolina over Denver. So guys, I really want to thank each and every one of you. Great football minds. I'm happy to have you on the show. And Joe, good luck to your team. I hate them, but good luck to them anyway. I'm not rooting for this team. I'm not giving you that score because I like your team. It's just I've watched them play throughout the season, waiting for them to lose, and it just never happened, except for that Atlanta game. But they've really played like a team that's on a mission to win. So thanks a lot, guys. I want to each one go down the line here. I'm going to start with Joe. Tell everybody how they can get a hold of you and what kind of projects you have going on.
Well, I'm Joe Riollano, a.k.a. the Freaking Puerto Rican. You can find me on Twitter at Joe Riollano. And we've got all kinds of stuff going on. We've got our podcast coming up next Tuesday. And then later that week, prior to the Super Bowl, we will be doing a special edition secret podcast talking about the Super Bowl and getting some various reports from a couple of people who are there. And it's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait for the Super Bowl. This is the opportunity of a lifetime for me to be able to see my team in the big game and with a really good chance to win it, so I'm excited.
All right. And Peter Blake.
Yes, you can find
Mr. Sports Web.
Yes, sir. You can find me on Twitter at pblake1003 or at WTAN 1340 AM Saturday afternoons from 4 to 5. The Sports Web. We have Mr. ESPN himself, Rick Brown, on almost every week. You can find us online at tantalk1340.com. Bring your passion, bring your excitement. Just don't bring any nonsense. Try it out. It's the most entertaining sports talk show in the Tampa Bay area. Why not buy into it?
That's right. It's for the fans.
That's right.
Okay, and the Steph Curry of ESPN with that layup.
Drop it back for three. No,
Drop a dime.
Mr. Rick Brown.
Hey, listen, I appreciate you having me on the show, for real. I'm glad we was able to hook up, Gene. Find me on Twitter at RickBrown91. Hey, I don't bite. Maybe a little bit, but only when the moon is full. So find me there. You can find my Buc stuff on ESPN.com and PewterCannons.com, and find my NFC South stuff on todayspigskin.com. Couple of podcasts. Check out insights.com. INSIIGHTS.com.
All right.
Nick and Rick.
All right. Yeah, I'll definitely be looking for that. And I'm Gene, super heavyweight. Go Bucs. You can reach me on Twitter, super heavyweight. Please, if you get a chance, you check this video out. Give us some likes, leave some comments. I'll get these comments out to the guys, and they can respond back to them. I really appreciate everybody taking the time to check this out, and everybody have a good evening. Thanks a lot, fellas, for being on.
All right.
Thank you, Gene. Appreciate you having me.
Appreciate it. Thanks a lot.